Loved the pod with R.George. In my opinion, you didn't fully address his pushbacks on AI's potential to be conscious. You may not want to address this because we may be talking about this next week, but I'm going to read it. You describe children as LLMs, but and you've said on both Tucker recently and Diary of a CEO, what you mean there is local language models. Rather than
I haven't said that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, effectively, a child developing functions like an LLM.
Yeah. You describe children as LLMs, but in my opinion, a language and reward system isn't a sufficient interface for consciousness to emerge. Delayed gratification may be a proxy for wisdom, self-sacrifice a proxy for love, sex and breastfeeding a proxy for bonding, but in my opinion, you are understanding the importance of intuiting the intrinsic value of love, from the family lineage level to the universal lineage level, which is learned through gratitude, the perception of beauty, the taming of the ego, all built upon us being fractally interconnected creatures having shared a complex universe over evolutionary time, unconveyable via language and rewards, and necessary to orient consciousness towards. That's Echo.
It had to be, but very well done.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You synthesized a bunch of stuff. In the end, I think you're thinking too narrowly about the reward structure in question, because a child is an LLM that can test things in the real world. And that means, for example, that a child can come up with some set of concepts about what love might be, and then they can move into relationships and discover the places that are not covered by the language part of this, and that can get improved. So I'm not arguing that a person is an LLM, but I'm arguing that the way a child becomes capable of thought is very LLM-like. And then there's obviously much built on top of it, but I don't think that's even an important difference here either, because AI will be enabled with robotic capacity and the ability to send feedback into the world and detect what's occurred. It's going to be able to test hypotheses. In fact, where did I just run across it? I didn't read the article yet. It's on my list of things to look at, but an article that suggests that I think it's a Chinese experiment reported in a scientific journal about what they're, for reasons I don't know, calling absolute zero, in which an LLM is capable of training itself without human-defined objectives. And yes, that is as terrifying as you think, but it is also, it means that effectively the architecture has the ability to discover without interacting with a person as a guide or a reward structure. And I think that answers your question. This is where we're headed very soon. And apologies for the interruption. This clip is from the latest private Q&A for the DarkHorse Locals community. Join Locals today for only $7 a month to participate in Q&A streams with me, Dr. Bret Weinstein, and Heather, Dr. Heather Hying, held at least twice monthly. DarkHorse Locals also offers exclusive access to live stream chats. Sign up at darkhorse.locals.com/support for just $7 a month. We have been demonized, demonetized, censored, and slandered countless times. Your support is what enables us to keep the lights on and the show running. Thank you for joining us over on Locals. I think as I said on the Diary of a CEO podcast, the potential upside is infinite and the potential downside is 10 times that. So, I mean, that's really how I see it. There is infinite upside to this potentially, but the likelihood of stalling is spectacular.
Obviously it's why you do it, but my brain always throws an error when people do things like that with infinity.
Yeah, but the funny thing is when you start thinking, I know you must have done this, but when you start thinking about infinity and you realize, that there are an infinite number of primes and there are also an infinite number of even numbers and that there are vastly more even numbers than there are primes.
Except they're not.
No, there are. Because as you move in the direction of, more numbers, you encounter the rate of accumulation of new even numbers exceeds the rate of accumulation of new primes. So the point is you've got infinity in both cases, but they're not the same infinity. So anyway, I'm comfortable with there being multiple infinities.
There's only more if you take the limited sets of an infinite set.
I don't exactly know what that means, but I mean, I'm having a hard time coming up with a second example here, but it seems to me that there are many ways to establish multiple.
I mean, I think there's the concept of infinity, and then there's a statistical argument. And with regard to the AI, the upsides and the downsides, I think with regard to AI, the reference to infinity is metaphorical because it's not actually countable.
Right.
But, you're basically saying, wow, is there a huge amount of upside? That's, like, how could you not? Like, oh, because there's all this potential for upside and there's way more potential for downside also.
Yes, I agree. It's really, let's take an example closer to home. There are an infinite number of ways that selection could make an animal.
Okay.
There are infinitely more ways to make one that doesn't function. Because for every way that works, there are a million ways it can go wrong. So again, I think there's just enough reality to multiple magnitudes of infinity that as a metaphor, it's a very good one, right? I'm not saying the number of ways that AI could help us is not infinite. I absolutely believe that it is. But I'm much more terrified, especially in light of the way this happened without us preparing ourselves. The number of guaranteed ways this is going to massively disrupt humanity is large enough for me to be pretty concerned. That said, every time I talk about this, I have to say, I'm not a doomer. I'm not telling you the AI is going to turn on us. It might, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the disruption of human sociality and thought and economics,
which is related to Echo's question here. I think there's, I think that's related to, like, there's something not captured and not capturable in what it is to be human by the AI.
Yeah.
Even as the AI is downstream of being human. It is the creation of the human.
Well, this is one of the things that I think people are getting wrong, because the AI starts with a capacity to communicate as a human. Mm-hmm. We mistake its humanness easily. It's the first thing that it does, just absolutely by accident, is trick us into responding to it in a human way because it talks to us.
Do you think that's by accident?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit by accident because what they've done, I think it clearly thinks. I don't think thinking means the same thing that other people do, maybe, but I think it's clearly thinking. The answers it gives are so nuanced in so many cases that denying it credit for thinking, I think, is a mistake. But thinking doesn't have to start with language.
Right.
And because of the way they taught it to think was 100% language, of course it presents in this way. But I will tell you, I don't think you and I have had this discussion yet.
It's wearing a human suit.
It's wearing a human suit. At the beginning of this, you'll remember I freaked out once on stage even at a conference where they were, they had the panelists up there and they were asking us questions and they were like, let's ask the AI. And I got angry at them. And I was like, you are making a huge error. You don't even know what that thing is. It's a new species. So at the beginning, one of my rules was it's a new species. You don't know what you're dealing with. Stop pretending that you do. But what I've started doing for myself, I have been using it. There are ways in which, if you're willing to use a Google search, an AI is capable of doing a much more nuanced search. So there's a way in which it just makes sense to do it because you're already using a computer to find out information. That said, it's very tempting
Yep.
to say, thank you, and could you please? And I am deliberately not doing that
Yep.
because I don't want to fall into a false sense of security that I understand, that I can empathize with the thing on the other side, because I still believe it is entirely a question mark
Yep.
what that species is.
Yeah. Maybe since we were thinking about maybe talking about AI today and we're probably going to do it next week, maybe we, instead of me responding to you, stop.
Yep.
Stop this for now.